Africans are very good people. Africans are very, very nice people. They are good everywhere they are. Good morning, Africans. I hope you're doing fine where you are, and if you ain't doing fine, please do fine where you are. So about the topic of Africa, many times we've divided history into two. We've divided history according to the Christianity religion. 2024 years after the death of the Christ. That is how we've divided time. We have the date before the birth of the Christ, and then we have the dates after the birth of the Christ. That is how we've divided time. If we go back, you can remember that Africa was not called Africa before. Africa was called amicable land. That is how we called our motherland. That is how we used to call ourselves. We were not countries like the ones we see today. We were never 54 partitions. We were one nation, one country. Even though the population was low, but we were one and one. Changes came when the colonizer came. The changes came when the explorers came. The changes came when the missionaries came. These are three different people. We have people who came with different purposes. The missionaries came with the purpose of spreading Christianity. The explorers came with the spirit of exploring adventure. And then we have the colonizer. The colonizer had a report that the missionaries and the explorers were in some place, and they discovered that this place was rich. This is how the colonizer came into Africa. But wait. Just hold on a little bit. Many times when we talk about Africa and religion, we normally focus on the Christianity religion. There's something that we don't really focus on. There's something we don't really talk about. You understand? The north of Africa and the south of Africa were not as we call them. We didn't have sub-Saharan Africa and the Saharan Africa. No, we didn't have that. You find that the north of Africa is primarily Islamic religion. The southern parts of Africa, the sub-Saharan Africa as people call it, is predominantly Christians. Why did this happen? Why is this so? We have even the north of my own country, Kenya, because Kenya lies in the equator. It's in the dividing line of Africa. The northern part, predominantly those religion are Islam. The Islam missionaries also came to Africa to spread Islam. They were coming with the crusades, they were attacking people, they were spreading their religion and this and that. Remember what happened in Uganda when Kabaka killed those Christian martyrs because he was a Muslim. At that time, Islam had reached Uganda. Even some parts of Western Kenya, the Luhya people, most of them are Islams. That is one thing you need to know. But there's a special country. No one talks of this country that much. Somalia. Somalia is not really known with a good name. Somalia has put itself in the map with a negative image. But there's something different I want to tell you. There is a professor who is actually a Somali, and he is going to give a history of the Somaliland before the coming of Islam. Now, today let's stop banishing, let's stop weeping, let's stop talking about Islam. Why don't people say Muhammad was black or brown? Why do people say Jesus was black? Why are people attacking the Bible? Why is that? Let's see Islam. Let's talk about Somalia, the history of Somalia before the coming of the Islam missionaries to Somaliland. Let's dive in.
We need to think of what was going on in Somalia before Islam. What kind of, what things that they were worshipping, Of course, before Islam, Somalia is very neighbor to a kingdom that is Christian. Ethiopia. Ethiopian Christianity goes long time ago. Long time ago. In fact, if you remember, when Portuguese were exploring this region, they were haphazardly, they were not aware where this, they were looking at something called the kingdom of Prester John. What's Prester John? Where is that? Portuguese, they heard about a Christian king somewhere in Africa or in India, they don't know. In fact, the way that guy they were looking for, he was in Ethiopia, not far from Somalia, next door. And again, what's your name, by the way? Chandra. Those days, for instance, there was no geographic delimitation to say this is Somalia, this is Ethiopia, this is Eritrea, this is Djibouti, that didn't exist. The region was wide open. However, there's a spot, the one I showed you, and tell me, this one, Aksum. This guy who helped the migrants, he was Christian, He was Christian, and he refused to give the Meccans these people back. So, unless Somalis say maybe we were Abyssinians or There is no specific religion that they were worshipping. Traditionally or conventionally, they were practicing certain, like every other communities in the world, in their pre-religious traditions, even pre-Christian tradition. There's always something to worship. Okay. For instance, in Somalia today, there are something called zar, a dance. They are dancing could be a god, who is helping, particularly with women who have some maybe ailments, and when they play that zar, and they call that zar god, which is called waq. Somalis probably, they heard about that name. Waq is God. Because in Islam, God is Allah, right? But they were calling for waq. There are places in Somalia today with waq shan, tell me, all kind of waqs, al-waq. So that pre-Islamic God existed. It is all tradition until today. It's not really well covered, but that was there. We have also some other some other dances like Mingis. Again, poor women. Always women were marginalized. So whenever they're in trouble, they end up into some spiritual things. They need spiritual healing. So this Ming is also a dance where they burn, incense and stuff like that. This lady who is impacted with this jinn or whatever, go into trance, and eventually she will be healed. There is something called the Borane, also. In some trance, people go in trance. So I think you're looking at those issues, pre-Islamic Somalia, there was something that they were worshipping, but really it's not well explored and well researched. So that is what I can think of. Yeah, the other part, I think, as I said, answering why Somalis are in this mess, probably in my concluding remarks, I said that until Somalia's history really looked comprehensively, because we Somalis, we don't know our history, really. Because our history is based on these nomadic, unsettled societies, all right? But if we revisit Somalia's history, Somalia's culture, Somalia's way of life, Somalia's languages, in history we believe there's something called revisionism, right? Always what one time was right could be wrong today. What was wrong one time could be right today. So I think that's why I'm saying reappraisal is due. We have to revisit Somalia's history and look deeply into how really we can understand. Because as I said, our African nations, our Middle Eastern nations, they're so confused on us. Because they say we suffer from tribalism or from sectarianism, from all of this Sunni, whatever, but we still exist. Our neighbors, Kenya, how many tribes are there? Ethiopia. But when we said, no, we're not like you guys, we're better than you guys, but we failed. So that failure, I think, we have to look and revisit our history, and we can correct things. It's very hard sometimes, certain lies to be corrected is tough, because some people who lived throughout their whole history in that lie, to be corrected, it might be some difficult today. But I think that could be one way that we can answer that question. Yes?
Thank you, Dr. for sharing this knowledge with us. The question that I have is... thank you. The question that I have is, you mentioned that most of the texts have not been converted to... or it's not even available. It's in other languages like Italian or Arabic. With the advent of AI, is it possible to get those books automatically? Maybe this is a question for Library of Congress. Automatically converted to English, or have you looked at those texts, maybe trying to translate it into English or something like that? Thank you.
Abdullah can help me with that because he is the one from the Library of Congress. And but I think, we shouldn't ignore any possibilities, any chances, anything that we can do, because Somalis claim. I mean, they don't read even today. I want to share with you. This is my late publication on Somali history, just published 2-3 months ago. Its title is it's on historiography, methodology of how to research, how to write, because anybody who takes a pen and have papers, writes something, that person cannot be a historian. History is a discipline. It needs certain patterns, certain rules governing how to do that, how to classify whatever you are experiencing, whether it is written sources or oral sources. I wrote, as Abdullahi mentioned earlier, I wrote most of my publications are in non-Somali languages. Okay, I wrote in Arabic, I wrote in English, few in Italian. Some Somalis are telling me, well, we don't read English, we don't. So now I have for them a challenge, really. This is in their language, okay? And anybody, maybe to translate this volume also into English, I have the PDF, so if the AI can help to automatically translate into English, I think that would be very interesting, and I will go for it. So I know this young man. I know he is an engineer, and in fact he has publications on how to teach with technology. So maybe you can help us, Mohammed, and use. I don't use AI for my courses right now because I'm very old-fashioned. I just stick to my gun, how it was before.
Okay, so that's it. Thank you very much for coming.
Now, after carefully listening to what Dr. Mukhatar has said, Dr. Mukhatar is an African he's an African professor who I think he resides in the United States of America, and you can see that he's teaching white students in the United States of America the African history. He is telling them about the coming of the colonizer, the coming of the missionaries, and time before the coming of these specified individuals. Here's what I gathered from that video, and here is what I want you to learn. Dr. Mukhatar has talked about the unification of Africa. There is no Pan-Africanism without speaking about the unity of Africa. Without the unity of Africa, we have no Pan-Africanism. Unification of Africa was always there. You understand? You understand that there is also a proverb which says, unity is strength, separation is weakness. The missionary, or rather the invaders, let me use the word invaders. When the invaders came, they seek to emphasize on the weaker side of the unification of Africa. They seek to provide a division. They seek to bring separation. And this separation would bring about the weakness of Africans. Remember, the significance of the Berlin Conference is still felt up to date. Africans are suffering with the visa issues, with the passport issues. Africa are way more against each other than before. Unification of Africa, as stated by Dr. Mukhatar, the Somali black professor, is very true, and is something that Africans need to apply. Another thing that the doctor talked about was religion was there in Africa before the coming of the invaders. Remember, by the beginning of the video, I told you about time and how time has been divided into two sectors. We have the BCE, and then we have time before we have before Christ, and then we have after Christ. The date we are in today, we are in the 21st century. The year is 2024. This date has been made from the death of a single individual. This is not just any individual. This is God. And this God, Jesus Christ, is the one whom we have divided time in. But remember, wait. Did Africans not worship anyone or anything before the coming of the Messiah or before the coming of these white people? Africans, in as much as it's bad to say, or is in as much as some people might call it witchcraft, which indeed it is witchcraft, we had a sense of a superior being. That is one thing I want us to understand. Africans had a sense of superior being. They knew that they had a reason for existence. They understood philosophy, philosophy of the existence of things. Things exist for a reason, and we have necessary beings, then we also have contingent beings. Contingent beings are beings which exist because another being has made them to exist. For example, is me here. I exist here because my parent met. If my parent had not met, I would have not been here. I would not have been making this video. Probably this channel wouldn't be there. This is an example of contingent beings. And then we have another being that makes the contingency become beings. This is the necessary being, which is God. Africans understood this philosophical concept. So even though we didn't worship the right God, even though we didn't recognize the creator of who he really is, we understood there was a superior being. And Somalis, as told by the doctor, had a god with a small g called Wok. This Wok god is a god that Somalis would worship to get children, to get food. This Wok god would make their life easier, and so they believed. You understand? They had faith. So Africans were not primitive. Even though we believed in the wrong thing, we believed there was a superior being. The concept of the superior being is what I want you to grasp in this part. The professor also noted something. Africa is a single country. He said that we didn't have Ethiopia, Somali, we didn't have these partitions, Djibouti, Kenya, those wasn't there. It was one single country. And he said that the missionaries were looking for a guy called John. John, they didn't know whether he was in India or rather whether he was in Africa. We didn't have Ethiopia. We didn't have that. We didn't have these boundaries. You walk somewhere, you get a fence. Africans would walk freely. But after the coming of the colonizer is when we saw the coming of the boundaries, because they wanted not to fight themselves in the presence of Africans, as this would give them a negative image. So Africa was a single country. We didn't have all these. Ethiopia has been stated in the Bible. Even in the Old Testament, we have Ethiopia being stated there. In Ethiopia, Christianity, which is a branch of Judaism, the Ethiopians believed in God, the true one now. This also emphasizes the concept of we believed in the superior being. I want you to clap on these guys. It's so beautiful that when people realize there is somebody who will hold you accountable one time. There is somebody who makes things right as they are supposed to be. There is a cosmic being. There is one being in existence whose reason for existence cannot be explained. The explanation for its being of existence can only be found within himself. The Ethiopians believe in the true God. The Ethiopian Bible is one of the oldest Bible we have. And you as a black person should know that black people took part in the Bible. But the Bible is not all about the history of black people. No, it has some parts where the black people are included, but the whole of it is not. Remember, a part is not greater than the whole. Parts make the whole, but it can never be greater than the whole. The whole is bigger. Remember also, Somalia was colonized by the Italians. Remember when the doctor said that he hasn't written his books in Somali languages, he's written them in non-Somali. First one is written them in Arabic, which all the Islamic book is only having one language, Islam. There is no translation of Quran. It's only Arabic. I think they're trying to retain the information in it as pure as possible, because sometimes words lose meaning over translations. Some words do not have some words. So, some languages do not have some words. Some languages do not have some prepositions, or rather, they don't have some other functional words. Some languages do not have the indefinite articles. It is important to recognize importance of grammar in translation of a historical text. He's a professor. Professors write books. Italian, English, Arabic is the languages he's chosen to write for his books. He has also said that there is a distinction that the Arabic world, the Middle East, is placing between themselves and the Somalis. They are saying, no, Even though we share the same religion, we are not one. Even though we worship the same God, Allah, we are not one. The doctor is saying the Arabs in the Middle East are not confirming themselves togetherness with the Somalis. And what are the reasons they give? Oh, you are very tribalistic. You have a lot of tribes. You are bringing tribalism into the... Oh goodness, oh goodness. If you look deep into it, you'll find that it's not about the tribes. It's about the skin color. It's about race. Remember what the Arabs did to Africans whom they enslaved? They castrated them because they didn't want that blackness flooding their country, because black is a dominant gene. Black is a gene that will wipe itself, will spread itself, I mean. That is black, and the black is always a dominant gene. The other shades, white shade, whichever shade that may exist, are always recessive. Black is the dominant. Remember one thing, diversification is what makes us Africans unique, and it makes us stand out. It is our strength. In diversification, we find our strength. We have different languages in Africa. We have people speaking this, people speaking that. So many languages and many tribes in Africa. Is it a bad thing? No, it ain't a bad thing. It's a good thing. We should celebrate our diversification. God made us this way, and He knows why He made us this way. We should be glad and rejoice in Him. Yes. I think I'm gonna end the video here. I hope you find value in what I do, and if you do find value, you know what to do as well. Subscribe, share some super things, please. Support me on Patreon. You can become a member, please. Some of you are members, but free members. I appreciate having members, but at least you can give something by the end of the month, which helps me bring good content to you. It helps me bring these resources to you, because these resources I'm using to bring these videos are really costly. Let me tell you, particularly here in Africa, these resources are really costly. So your support on Patreon will be so much appreciative. You don't have to be only a free member. Become somebody who can offer us whatever you want, yes. It's not about the money, it's about the message. Please don't get me wrong. This is EFK original documentaries. See you in the next one. And I love you guys. I love my black people.